You've got questions, we've got answers. Welcome to the Therapist Question Box, where trauma-trained therapists tackle real questions from real people. I'm your host, Lindsay, bringing you grounded insights you can actually use, brought to you by Therapy Utah. Welcome back to another episode of the Therapist Question Box. We are here to answer your mental health questions. So ask away anything that is on your mind. Let us know, write in, and we will do our best to provide answers for you. Today I have with me Grant Helt. Grant, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. It's been a while.
It has been a while. It's so good to have you back.
Thanks.
Grant and I work together in the management team here at Therapy Utah. It's been a while since we've had him on, so it's fun to have you back.
Excited to be back.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about therapists, finding a therapist, finding the right fit. We all know that finding the right fit with a therapist is such a big deal. Mm-hmm. So let's jump right into the question, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So the question is, it's hard to find a therapist with my cultural and religious beliefs. Does it matter if they have the same beliefs as me? So first of all, I think this question a lot of people ask when they're looking for a therapist. Mm-hmm. I want a therapist that has this belief or that is a part of this community. Is that important?
It's a great question. We do get that question a lot.
We do.
As therapists. And others in the same vein, like, are you married? Do you have kids? And so I think jokingly, I could answer it in one word, yes or no, mm-hmm. and we could have the shortest, most boring podcast that's ever been recorded today. But so my short answer would be no. Your therapist does not have to have the same cultural and religious background, but there's a deeper meaning behind the question, I think.
Agree.
And if we just answer it at face value, we're missing what a client might really be asking.
Okay.
Right.
What do you think the client might really be asking? I'm like, let's dive a little deeper.
And I think this is great as you're looking to find a therapist that's a good fit. A therapist that understands and is sensitive to those issues, culture and religion, is going to have the wherewithal to not just answer it at face value, but to be able to explore what the meaning of that question really is to you, because it can be different, right? I've had clients ask me that question, and the feeling behind it is, are you going to understand me? Are you going to blame my culture or religion for challenges in my life? Because that doesn't feel safe to me. But I've also had clients that are on the other end. Like, are you going to judge me like I've been judged? Are you going to make assumptions about my experience because you have the same background as me? So it really, I think, needs to start with this curiosity of what is driving the question for the client. And that's going to inform who, as a therapist, is going to be a really good fit to help meet their needs. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, is that no, it doesn't matter, but I think there's some major caveats. Yes.
Because I as a therapist, we are trained to actually be objective, to recognize our value system may not be the client's value system, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. Our job is not to convince them of ours at all. It's to meet them where they're at. So if you have a therapist that is trying to convince you to adopt their value system, we might have a problem. Would you agree with that?
I would totally agree with that.
Yeah.
There's, on this topic with it's both culture and religion, but from a religious perspective, and we could do a whole other podcast on this topic, so I won't get lost in the weeds, but a really great resource on understanding spiritual development is The Stages of Faith by James Fowler.
So good.
It's a great book.
Yep.
There's also been a lot of resources available online if listeners are interested to look at that. So I won't get lost in the weeds, but as it pertains to this conversation, one of the things that Dr. Fowler points out is that in organized religion, he has 6 stages of faith, and organized religion can really help a person get to about stage 3. And then beyond that, it's an individual experience. So within therapy, if you find a therapist that is pushing their values or is limiting the conversation to their preconceived notions, what you're going to experience in therapy is a similar thing. like I can only get so far in exploring what's really going on for me, where a really sensitive therapist to cultural and religious issues will be able to guide an individual through conversations to help them really explore these deeper meanings and to develop a deeper sense of spirituality than could happen if therapy turns into feeling more like Sunday school or the opposite of that it's anti against a faith or something. So that what you said is spot on. The not pushing values is so critical to the safety and progress for the client.
And I feel like that's important for clients to understand, because I don't think that everyone knows that, right? Like it has to be somebody that is within my culture, within my religion, or it's somebody that they cannot be, because I have left this culture, this religion, this tradition. And so I can't have anybody that is affiliated. And the truth is, a good therapist is not going to try to sway you one way or the other. They're going to try to get to the deeper issue around the pain of leaving or becoming a part of, or whatever it is. And that's what the issue is, as opposed to, are you in, are you out, what's happening culturally, what's going on. It's, what does it mean to you? What is the feeling behind it? What is the pain that you're experiencing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think,
so,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think in that vein, like a really good therapist is going to be just as secure having conversations about the meaning and depth of meaning of your faith as they will be in talking about your questions and doubts and insecurities around it. And
that's right.
When you feel that they're taking a side on one or the other, it guides the conversation in a way that gets in the way of being able to really explore with truth and
absolutely. Yeah. All of those things. Yes. And one of the first things that when I'm teaching students is that the therapeutic alliance is the most important thing. So can you talk to our listeners about the therapeutic alliance and why that matters?
Yeah. You're so exactly right. Therapeutic alliance in so many studies has been shown to be the number one predictor of outcome. It's not what trainings I have, how much experience I have. It's how I relate to you.
It's a relationship.
It's a relationship
between client and therapist, period.
Yeah. Yep. And therapists are really trained to, with today's topic, to be culturally sensitive. And what that means is that I understand that and this is part of the alliance, right? That your background and your worldview affect how you're experiencing what you're experiencing. Whether it's anxiety, depression, addiction, marital issues, like these things that are so core to how you see the world are going to affect that. And so as a culturally sensitive therapist, I'm taking that into consideration, not blaming culture or religion for that, but understanding how it influences. And also, a therapist that's culturally sensitive, in order to build that alliance, is going to know how to do their own homework, where they will ask questions to be sure, and they know the right types of questions to ask, but you don't want to be, as a client, in this position of having to explain for half of your session.
That's right.
Right? Like terms and concepts. And a good therapist understands that I need to do some homework if I'm not part of that same culture or religion to understand that.
Yes.
So that my client can really explore and not use their time having to define so much.
Well, and I even think it is, in addition to culture, religion, I think it's abilities too. Like, if you have a lived experience that this therapist doesn't understand, maybe different abilities that, that a therapist may not understand. A good therapist is going to do their homework around this lived experience the client has had, right? Whether it be cultural or otherwise, right? It might be a health experience. I may not understand what it is like to live with a chronic health condition. And so I would need to do some research around what that health condition is like to understand where that client is coming from.
Right.
And so, yes, I think a good therapist is going to do their homework, and it is not the client's job to educate them.
Right.
I think that is so important, because if a client feels like they're trying to manage the therapist, we got a problem. Right?
Yep.
So what do you think the advantage might be, actually? So you said no. The answer is no. We don't need someone that's the same cultural or religious background as the client. But what's maybe the advantage of having a therapist that is not a part of your culture or religion?
It's a really good question. I think there's advantages and disadvantages to both, and we've kind of talked about how those can be overcome through cultural sensitivity. One advantage I can think of having somebody that has a different worldview is just that it's a fresh perspective. It's maybe being able to talk about things in a different light that can bring some insight to the client. For instance, in my personal experience as a therapist, I do a lot of work with sexual addiction and betrayal trauma. And oftentimes there's religious and cultural messages that influence how people are experiencing that. Mm-hmm. Some of them might be in alignment with some of my life experiences too. But if I can step back from that and relate objectively to the client, what that allows is a couple of things. One, to be able to talk about those issues in a way that there's usually not an avenue to talk about them in different settings. But two, it can also allow for them to have what I would call like an emotionally corrective experience. Meaning, when I talk about this issue, maybe with a church leader or different people I've reached out for help with before, there's a certain energy around it. And maybe it's well-intentioned, but results in me feeling some shame or just a closed offness about being able to talk about it openly. Where if I'm meeting with a therapist that maybe sees it a little bit differently or more neutrally even, there's this experience that I can have where I'm talking about it, and instead of shame and judgment and fear, I'm experiencing curiosity, acceptance, more openness in the conversation, and that in and of itself can be healing.
That's right. And that is so important when we experience those things, that in of itself is so important. So if you were to say, generally speaking, how would you suggest that a client knows if a therapist is a good fit for them?
Generally speaking.
Yeah, just generally speaking. Like, let's just say cultural, religious, outside of the context. How do we know if, okay, I've got a good therapist here, this is working well for me?
Yeah. So I think there's some personality differences with this too. Mm-hmm. And so there's some answers that I would give that are pretty applicable to most people.
Okay.
And an answer I would give that is going to depend on your personal style. I'll start with that.
Okay.
Some clients really prefer having a therapist that's directive, and for instance, we have homework assignments. There's a very clear path that we're following. Other clients are more, I'm exploratory in the therapy. And it gets in the way of being able to talk about all the things I want to talk about openly if it's overly structured. And so that's one thing. But I would say even deeper than that, the simple answer I would give is to just be honest about how you feel in the room with your therapist. Do I feel myself holding back information because I'm unsure of how my therapist would respond? And I would tell listeners too, give your therapist a few sessions. That's
For
normal
sure.
You're both building relationship. But if you're several sessions in and you're still kind of feeling that might be an indicator that there might be something here that either we need to address or it may not be a good fit. Mm-hmm. The other question to ask is, do I feel understood by my therapist? And that kind of comes back to what we were talking about earlier, that if I feel like I'm having to explain my experience and perception and do a lot of context work with my therapist rather than them just being attuned to me, that's going to affect the alliance, right?
For sure.
So how I feel, can I open up? Am I holding information back? Do I feel seen or understood? I think those are a few that come to my mind.
I love that. And to me, that also puts the responsibility on the client as well. Mm-hmm. I've got to do some introspection of a client to really get curious. Is this working for me? Am I achieving the goals that I came in here for? Do I feel understood? Do I feel like I'm like they understand me and I'm safe to say what's really going on for me.
Right.
So, there's responsibility on both ends. I think that's really important to understand too. And I love that you said, give therapists a couple of sessions. And, I think that same thing. I will sometimes have a client come in and they want relief now and they want it quick and they want to figure this out. And it makes sense because it's something that's causing trouble for whatever reason. But often these are patterns that have been going on for a very long time.
Yes.
So to recognize relief can start happening incrementally, but healing takes time. And so to give yourself and your therapist time to do their best work. Because if you're just trying to get through it, it's going to be problematic. Would you agree with that?
I would totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And I would add to that, like, I know as a therapist, I've had off days.
100%.
We all do.
100%.
And I'll find myself feeling like I can't wait for that next session to maybe address something that came up today. So it is important to kind of give it that time for that relationship to develop.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And again, it takes some time. It's interesting. I think too, I had a new client come in last week and he started talking to me and I thought, it's amazing the unspoken agreement between therapist and client. This is a person I've never met and just comes in and tells me their heaviest, hardest things, and I thought, isn't it interesting culturally that this is just what we do, right? And so we come in and divulge all of this information that's heavy and hard, but boy, it's going to take some time to work through and to understand and to provide healing. And so that we're both in it, right? To do the work, to really dig in and do that hard work. So, and again, it takes both parties. So I really appreciate that thought. So, for anyone listening who's maybe put off therapy because they're afraid, that the therapist won't understand their background or beliefs, what's your best advice for them as they start researching?
Best advice would be, I think a couple of things as I sit with that question. One is courage. Like I have so much respect for the courage that clients exercise.
Amen.
Like, I don't think I could give an answer that is going to remove all the concerns that clients have about reaching out that first time, other than to say, just to cheer them on, to say, take that step for yourself and practice that courage to do that. If there's doubts, I think a really great thing is to be able to do a consult. And, at Therapeutic, that's something that we offer, free consults. And so if it's like, I'm really trying to figure out who would be the best fit for me and why they would be the best fit. And, I'm going off of experience and specialty. And sometimes, to be honest, even like whether I feel like their face is warm when I look at their picture or something, right? But if there's that doubt, to reach out. And, I'm happy to talk to a client. Or if you have questions about a therapist, it's like, I think they could be a fit. Most of our therapists will do free consults as well.
And tell us about the free consults. What's that?
It's a brief 15-minute call where just you're maybe just giving a little bit of an idea for what you're looking for help with. And then the therapist or our front office staff is trained to do this as well, can hear what the client is bringing into therapy and then make a recommendation and say, based on what you're saying, because what the client doesn't have that we do on the team is really knowing the therapist, right? It's like you can read a bio and we try to make those really accessible. But when you reach out to myself, one of our therapists, or the front office staff that does these consult calls, they know that person. They know that therapist. And so as they're talking to a client, they can get that feel for, this would be a really good fit, and this is why. And that can kind of help ease some of that, take some of the pressure of having to make all that decision on your own as the client off.
That's a big deal. Like when you can say, okay, we know what this therapist has to offer. We know what the presenting problem with the client is, and we try to make the best match. And that, have a 15-minute conversation and see if there's some warmth and rapport there. Then you can move forward. Yeah. Because I think it is tricky, right? Once you go to a therapist, it's like, I don't want to start over. Okay, at least they know me and they know my story. but to really advocate for yourself. And it's really helpful to know the things at Therapeutic that are there in place to help provide the best match possible.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's awesome.
Yep.
And again, take advantage of that 15-minute consult call, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it can be that way.
Yep.
Is there anything, Grant, that we haven't discussed that you feel like is really important around this topic that we haven't hit on?
I think we've hit on it, Lindsay. I just, coming back to something that we spoke about earlier, with having an open conversation rather than a closed-ended conversation around that question. So what I mean by that is, if I'm client asking my therapist, do you have the same religious background? That closed-ended in the response to that can be a very black and white yes or no. And I think in a really therapeutic way, that conversation can become more open-ended, where it's more the questions like we discussed, where, what is that? What does it mean to you? Tell me a little bit about the significance of being able to have somebody that has an understanding of your background. And I just feel like I wanted to share this experience before we wrapped up, because it may be impactful for some that are listening.
Sure.
It was in a training that I attended once that somebody shared this, that as a client themselves, they had a therapist that they felt very safe with and did a lot of great work with. And religion never came up. It was just, it did come up in the work, but the topic of, do you have the same background as I do, had never come up. And then at one point it did. Client asked a question, therapist was honest about it. It didn't affect the work immediately. But part of what this individual said they were working through was their own concerns with their faith. And they said, my therapist did a great job at holding space for that. And ultimately they made the decision that their faith was not the right fit for them. And they said it was
their faith, or the therapist was
their
not
faith
right.
was not. So they came into a session and
Okay.
said,
Their
as
faith
I've
is
been
not the right
exploring this, I feel like it's better for me to maybe take a step back, explore some other things, just figure out how I feel. And they were just naming the impact it had when their therapist responded by saying, "Oh, I didn't mean to steer you away from your faith." And they said it just in that moment, all of the safety that they had felt up to that point was undermined. It felt like just there's this insecurity now. And so the reason I share that story is that's the importance of cultural sensitivity, that whether your therapist has the exact same background or not, that they have the respect to honor your decisions and to support those decisions and really just want what's best for your well-being. And having that security in, I'm just as comfortable, like we've already said this, but I'm just as comfortable talking about the significance and depth of that significance of your faith as I am if you're starting to move away from that. So
yes,
I just felt like hearing that experience, I just wanted to add that, because that may be something that for some listener is helpful to just understand as I'm exploring these things.
Absolutely. I think that's so interesting to hear it from a perspective of a client that is saying, I felt undermined. That wasn't at all the experience. But when the therapist said, "I'm sorry that I did this," and it's like, no, that's actually not what this was about. It was a decision this client made.
Yeah. And
to really understand that is impactful. Again, a therapist also, I would say from a therapist perspective, we have feelings around what's happening or what's not. But again, we've got to stay in a place of, I'm just here to support you on your journey. Whatever that journey is for you, it's not me to judge whether I think it's right or wrong. And good therapists will do that.
Yep.
So, yeah. Well, I loved some of the thoughts that you said, that no, it's not necessary. You answered that really quickly out of the gates, that the therapeutic alliance is number one, and to ask yourself that question: how do I feel in the room? Do I feel safe? Can I be myself? Do I feel challenged? Are we working towards goals that I have in mind? And to really ask yourself that question more than, does this person have my same lived experience, right? That sometimes even the different perspectives are really helpful. That sometimes we get in our own echo chamber of, this is all that I'm thinking and people in my world support me in this, but to have somebody to kind of say, well, have you considered this, or have you looked at it this way, can be really helpful. I loved what you said about the courage to reach out. I really think that cannot be overstated, that making that initial phone call to a therapy office, getting online and saying I need help requires such vulnerability and courage, and just to honor, that we as therapists honor when clients do that. As you talked about that, I thought that, like, I feel that deeply, that it is an act of courage to seek out help and to say, I need some additional help, and I need somebody besides my circle to help me through this. And it's an incredible amount of trust that our clients give to us. Is. And I just honor that trust because it's profound. And I think, again, a good therapist honors that and recognizes that it's a sacred responsibility for sure. So
absolutely.
Well, Grant, thank you so much for being here with us. Really appreciate our listeners' question. And I think it's something that we have, those that are in this space of providing therapy have gone through, have actually wrestled with. And certainly those who are seeking out a therapist have probably asked themselves this question. So thank you for answering it. And also for our listener for writing in and that vulnerability around that as well. And thank you for being here with us. We are grateful to share this time with you. We know that your time is limited, and so we appreciate your spending time with us, and again, trusting us, because we recognize that it is an act of trust to listen and to recognize, there are insights here that may be valuable. And we hope this is something that you have found valuable and that you can share with those that are maybe seeking help and that are looking for assistance. And thank you again, Grant, for being here, and thank you for listening. And until next time, take care. That's a wrap for today on the Therapist Question Box. I'm Lindsay Schiss. Thanks for listening. And remember, every question you ask is an opportunity to learn and grow. Brought to you by Therapy Utah.
Hey, this is Kathy Kinghorn. I'm an owner at Therapy Utah. If you'd like to book with one of our trauma-trained therapists, go to www.therapyutah.org. Thanks for listening.